morning. It's time for Let's Talk Relationship. I hope that you are getting interactive with us on all our social media platforms. It's time for a very great conversation. I'm excited about this one. When my producer sent the topic to me some days ago, I told her that this is actually a topic that I was discussing with somebody, that is it mandatory for a woman to change her surname after marriage? If I choose not to change my surname after marriage, are there any, implications to it? What could I be possibly losing if I don't change my surname to my husband's surname after marriage? And so that is the topic for discussion today during Let's Talk Relationship. Before I get into that, a huge thank you to Nutri Snacks Oats Digestive. Like I always say, for those of you that love to go on diets but still want to enjoy something great, something delicious, something healthy at the same time, you need to opt for Nutri Snacks Oats Digestive because it is full of fiber, all the nutrients and the vitamins that you need. It's not just for kids, for you adults as well. It is great for you. So you need to go get yourself some Nutri Snacks Oats Digestive. Now it is time for us to get started with the conversation. Must a woman change her surname after marriage? Get interactive with us. Share your opinions in relation to this topic on our WhatsApp line. The number is 055-157-5757. 055-157-5757. Or go to our Facebook page. It is Joy Prime, and get into the comment section and tell us anything at all that you have to share in relation to this topic. Now, I know that quite a number of you would think that, a woman changing or adopting her husband's name after marriage is something that is African. I know that quite a number of you had that notion, had that mentality that is an African thing, because barely would you find women outside the country changing their surnames to their husband's surnames after marriage and then all that. But guess what? It didn't start here in Africa. No, it did not. It actually started in France in the 11th century, and then it moved to Britain, and then through colonialism it came to Africa, and then we also started adapting to that. But here's the situation where in recent times, some women are beginning to move away from the fact that you have to adopt your husband's surname after marriage. Those times it was because women were like a possession of their husbands. And so after they get married to them, you have to by force bear your husband's surname. And it's like, it's no more like that. And we want to find out that is legally, do you have to? If you don't, could you lose something? And so I have seated with me this morning Kweku Y. Pencil Esquire, and he is a private legal practitioner, notary public, managing solicitor, Pencil and Co. Pencil and Co. Good morning, Kweku.
Fine morning.
How are you?
I'm very fine.
Okay, and we are joined via Zoom all the way from Abidjan, Dr. Caroline Kusi, behavioral scientist and therapist. You're going to do your very best to get her. She'll be joining us via Zoom from Abidjan, so she's going to join the conversation as well. So like I said, hop on, get interactive with us on our social media platforms, and this one is great for you. So let's get talking. Kweku.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Cool running.
Cool, great. Yeah, okay, man. Cool running. Right.
Yes.
How are you feeling this morning?
I'm okay.
You're okay.
Very, very.
Okay, so the topic for discussion today is must a woman change her name after marriage? Is it mandatory?
No, it's not mandatory. That's when we're speaking from the perspective of law. There's no law in this country, nor do I know of any law in any country that requires that a woman must necessarily change her name after marrying. It's got to do more about tradition, where this thing came from, and social reality. The fact that a lot of women marry and then there is some societal need for her to change her name. But as far as law is concerned, there is no law in this country. Okay, so we are going to delve a little deeper into the law aspect of it. But before that, let's come to you as a man. I know that there are quite a number of men who, for the sake of feeling or wanting to know that there's a sense of belonging. Kweku is laughing at me. To feel, that there's that sense of belonging, after marriage, they would want you to bear their surname. But because
As a man, personally, you're married.
I am.
Does your wife bear your surname?
For a long time, no. For a reason, and I will let you know as
I
we
can't
proceed.
wait for you to share that with me.
Right.
But from a man's perspective,
yes.
What does your wife bearing your surname or not bearing your surname do to you?
Obviously, a man and a woman, from even the biblical perspective, they become one. And even though we came to meet it as a tradition, if a woman bears the husband's name, it creates a certain bond, a certain uniqueness, a certain identity that gives, certainty, not certainty, some assurance and certainty. I will use the word certainty now, to both couple, in the sense that then the family gets to have one name. I'm Pencil. So if my wife is Mrs. Pencil, my children are Pencil, then we have a family in the right sense of it. Without it, there may be things, I'll put it this way. If I'm Pencil, you are, okay, my wife is Asafo Mensa. That's her surname. And you are traveling with my children, they are Pencil. Even immigration, they want to know whether really you are the mother. All of these things are right. There are a lot of factors that operate. So it's not even a man's thing. As a man, yes, I will love it. But there are good reasons why a woman may also wish that to bear her husband's name. Because there are inconveniences, embarrassment, things that society have come to accept in a certain way. If I turn up in your workplace and I say I'm looking for my wife, they say, what's your name? Kweku Pencil. What's your wife's name? Something else. These are all the kind of things. So we'll rather talk of advantages and possibly disadvantages of not bearing your husband's name. So like I said, I wouldn't really care. Indeed, for a long time, I didn't really bother about whether my wife wanted to bear my name or didn't want to bear my name. But I'll tell you, once we proceed, why Ghanaian women, some of them will never adopt their husband's name until they've crossed a certain stage, even though they are married.
There's something like that?
There's something like that, and I'll show you. In Ghana, we've got 3 forms of marriage. We've got customary marriage, we've got marriage under the ordinance, and we've got the Mohammedan marriage. I'll talk about customary marriage and marriage under the ordinance. Customary marriage is essentially what we call a potentially polygamous marriage. Somehow, our women, and I'll be very blunt, have equated customary marriage to what they call engagement, which is not an engagement. We have engagement under customary law, we have marriage proper under customary law. But somehow, so in Ghana, which is in actual fact the traditional marriage. That is so.
Okay.
Our traditional marriages, you see, because customary marriage can be converted into an ordinance marriage. In other words, you can marry under the customary law, which is a potential polygamous marriage, which can be converted into an ordinance marriage, which is essentially monogamous marriage. So you notice that every ordinance marriage that we contract in Ghana, it is preceded by the customary marriage. And those two processes from which you move from customary marriage to ordinance marriage, they're all marriages, except that by law, a customary marriage can be converted to an ordinance marriage and lose its traditional rights and everything. But then, so there are people who have customary marriages, which is valid on the Ghanaian law, which can be registered on the Ghanaian law. But somehow, our women believe and think that until you have translated the marriage into ordinance marriage, they are not amiss. That's the way they do. Even though the marriage is valid for all purposes. Because not everybody is compelled by law to marry under the ordinance.
Is it that because a lot of Ghanaian women also feel like when you just do the customary
they
marriage,
look forward.
It's incomplete.
That's
or
what
the marriage
think.
Is incomplete.
That is so. They feel incomplete unless you've carried a Ghanaian woman.
Customary marriage can stand on its own.
Valid. Got a certificate. Valid. They can be registered and can have the certificate and everything. But our kind of women, you here, if I marry the customary, you feel incomplete. You feel that I must carry you to the altar, where then after we have had the ordinance marriage, then you feel right to be called Mrs. So that distinction has been drawn in this country more by social reality and our own practices than by law. So if a woman decides that that's it, unless, and of course a form of also, because I'll put it this way, and please, I make this as a general statement.
Okay.
Every Ghanaian woman more or less has an idea or loves that she'll be carried to the altar. And if for some reason she's not been carried to the altar, she considers the marriage incomplete, half, and so forth and so on. And so she will not rush, if I put it that way, to have her name converted or changed to take the husband's name. And from our practice, many women that decided to keep their own surname did so prior to being taken to the altar. So that's the way I have seen a social reality.
But can a woman who has done the customary, who has been through the customary marriage, bear her husband's surname after that?
Why not? It's married. But it's our own women who have decided that until they've had ordinance marriage. So I do not know many women who ever had a customary marriage, who ever became Mrs. I recall my own mom never married under the ordinance. But I remember way back in secondary school, and at first she was a Mrs. And that's what I felt. Because my father had validly married her, born children, whatever. But when you call people, my mother's Mrs. Penty, they don't accept it. For the only reason that they have not seen her. That is so. I mean, so in Ghana, even the people that say, but you yourself can decide to call yourself a Mrs. whoever, even if there has not been a dance marriage. That's the way it is.
Okay.
So some of these are dictated by our own cosmic values and our own social reality and our own appreciation of what is right and what is wrong, which got nothing to do with law.
Okay, all right, okay. So we'll come to the Mohammedan one as
You're very
well.
welcome.
But then before that, Caroline, Dr. Caroline Kusi is on, has joined us via Zoom. Good morning. Can you please unmute?
I'm off mute.
Okay, I can hear you clearly now. So Dr. Caroline Kusi is a behavioral scientist and therapist, and she's joined us all the way from Abidjan. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing, and how is Abidjan doing?
I'm well. Abidjan is doing well. Yeah, lots of differences from Ghana, but it's a lovely country.
Okay, differences as in?
I would say it's slightly more clean.
Okay.
Than Accra. You know, the people are very warm, very nice. It's been a struggle with the French, but it's been a good trip overall.
Okay, all right. So the topic for discussion today is Master Woman Change Her Surname After Marriage, and Esquire, Kweku Pencil Esquire has said quite a lot in relation to the marriage under ordinance and the customary marriage. And he stated that customary marriage, a lot of Ghanaian women, after going through the customary marriage, think that the marriage is incomplete, and so after doing the customary, they don't see the need to bear the surname of their husbands, which is one reason. Until the ordinance is done, that is when they would feel the need, okay, now the marriage is completed, so we can bear the surname of the husband. So that is so far where we've gotten to in relation to the topic. And so I'll come back to you, Dr. Caroline, Dr. Kusi. But Kweku, I want us to talk about the Mohammedan. What about them?
Yeah, the Mohammedan marriage, they typically do not make an issue of whether it should be Mrs. They don't make an issue out of it at all. Okay. But what makes the difference is that there's a history to this Mrs. business you were saying from France. You know, because we are a British colony, I may put it as blunt as that.
Yes.
The history starts from common law. We got what they call the doctrine of coverture. Coverture is Coverture. It was a coverture. It was a doctrine that made, based on common law, that made a woman a part of a man upon marriage, such that she lost her legal existence. when she's married. So when you are married, you are part of your husband. You cannot have
everything about you.
Everything about you. You cannot have credit. You cannot. In fact, in the early days, you cannot be liable for. I mean, you cannot be held criminally liable. You cannot own property of your own. You cannot have anything of your own. So that was the history, and it was quite strict. I mean, it even went into America in the early days of their form of. I don't want to use the word colonial, but when they also became a British colony, let me put it that way. And there are legal records of these matters until about 1601 that the first American citizen woman got even a passport in her own name. I mean, it was as strict as that. I mean, this was judge-made law, which meant that a woman is part of her husband. That is it. You can even pledge your husband's credits. I mean, that is to say, if my wife decides to go and take credit for all kinds of things, she cannot be held liable. It has to be, I mean, put on a man's account and so forth. And so that's how it is. But in the course of time, when laws on property and so forth were made, were passed, then the woman then began to have an existence of her own. But then, because of the strong tradition that went with it, it has still remained, even in England, in America. In fact, the statistics, Ghana here, we don't have our social scientists who do a lot of this statistical. If there are, I've not read them. But even in America now, the statistics that about 80% women still want to keep their husband's name. So it is about a response to social norms and social realities and so forth and so on that drives the need for women to keep their husband's name. So there's no strict law. But then, even talking about that, you see, we are talking about change of name and marriage. So I will limit myself to it.
Yes.
Better than that, as a matter of law, you don't need to do anything to even change your name. You can decide if tomorrow you want to be called Jack Clinton, that will become it, and that will be it. There's a procedure for registering a change of
so
name
that
and so forth and so on. So is that strict? What do you call tradition? Which emanated from the laws on coverture, would that give, rise to this system of women having their names, adopted their husband's names. And that, of course, Ghana, we just adopted it. But please, I'll tell you that, even when you come to Ghana, among Fantis, okay, the social stigma, if a woman, you're not Mrs., you are categorized. You belong to a certain class. Because, of course, Fantis being on the coast and having the first contact with these white people, we borrowed every culture, every tradition that they brought, and therefore there's always a distinction about a woman who has been properly married and a woman who has not been properly married. So that's how we've got this system that is still in place in this country. So nobody's going to say that anybody's obliged, compelled, or forced to change the name to marriage.
All right, Caroline. Hi. So, Caroline, I chanced on somewhere that when a woman refuses to change her surname after marriage, it's only showing how egoistic that woman is. I want you to share your opinion in relation to that, and then we'll come to the advantages and disadvantages as well.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, this is a topic that even, results in lots of issues in marriages, both in the West and in developing countries. And I think it's important to assess why, right? Why does a woman want to make the decision to not change her surname? And there are several reasons for that. One reason could be that they want their surname to reflect the ethnic group that they come from. Other women may decide that, I'm all about women's empowerment and I don't want my legal and social identity to be attached to a male. Some women also feel like, I do want to take on the surname because there's some prestige, associated with the name. So I think it's important to really figure out why that is the case, and also to know that there are options, right? But this has to be navigated very, very well with couples, because what you risk is one spouse having resentment for the other spouse, and that can, that can sort of, put the relationship at risk even before you begin to build your lives as a couple. And so it's really important to really figure that out. And also, I know that some women will feel pressured because of in-laws and things like that. So we need to be sensitive. We need to be empathetic. We need to listen to what each other is saying, and then be able to make decisions from there.
Okay. So now I want us to get started on the advantages of sticking with your surname as a woman after marriage.
So, as I mentioned, one advantage, could be that the woman really, really values the prestige and, the status that comes with the last name, right? So, for example, if you're from a very wealthy family or a very influential family, and you're marrying into it, who wouldn't want, their
to be associated with that,
to reflect that as well. And then I think also, if you do decide to take on your spouse's surname, it really is a sign for both families that, you're committed to each other, that belong to each other, that you want the same things, and that you really want to have some sort of connection with your spouse's family, as an example. Another advantage would be, any economic or, legal protections that come with keeping your spouse's surname. So those are the few for now.
Okay, all right. Cool. Do you have any more advantages that you would love to add to this?
Many.
Okay.
Many. Like I started with the example, the word is not ostracization. I mean, but you feel, you feel not shunned. I mean, you will feel as not belonging if you don't, because you see, these are traditions births over thousands of years. And for me also as a Christian, I mean, this whole business of man being the head of the home, which I believe in, and what it means is that if you have a husband, you not better the name, the impression that you give to everybody is that maybe for some whatever reason that you have, you don't want to submit even to the husband's authority in the home.
Someone would say that the husband does not have a nice surname.
Well, that may be so.
It doesn't sound nice. You have a very
heavy name.
I can't move from having a very sweet sounding surname to a,
I know of all of that, but that's life. You take a decision, love me, love my dog. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it goes. And like I gave you the examples, I mean, I think in fairness to those, but there are embarrassment and certain indignities that society would let you feel. In other words, like the example that I gave to you, you travel, you even in the US, so it's very serious. You don't bear your children, bear the husbands, and you want to pick the children. You want to pick even the children from the school, and you are who? And how do you relate to the children? You have to be answering all kinds of questions on a daily basis, and so forth and so on. But that, in my honest view, should not be the only reason. Because a woman is always under the cover of her husband. It does not matter whether you are the managing director of the IMF. You could have whatever. And it doesn't cost you anything. And even though some for good reasons, see, I don't hold it so strongly against any woman who decides that she doesn't want to bear the husband's name. Because sometimes, some women, by reason of their professional status, for instance, they have come to be associated with certain work, certain things, and they want to retain that image. Tina Turner was a good example. She had Ike Turner, her husband Ike Turner. Her real name is not Tina Turner, but then she reached a certain fame, certain status, so it became a brand, and then she wanted to market that Tina Turner brand. And in fact, in that matter, it ended up in court, and for her, she has to win a right. The court, she has to pay something to the husband in order to retain the name. And that may be possibly...
That is after the divorce.
That is after the divorce, because there's something called jactitation in the common law, which enables a man to get a court to compel a woman to take his surname from off the woman after the marriage. I mean, after the divorce, or upon divorce. Because if I'm Kweku Pensy, I'm married to me, Mrs. Pensy, and you divorce me, love my dog. You don't go about carrying my name if I don't want to. Because you may be giving a false impression to other people that I've married a new woman. She may say, you're also carrying on and making it seem like I'm in a bigamous relationship and so forth and so on.
I have a friend. I have a friend who lives in the UK, and his ex-wife still carries his surname on her social media platform. So it's Abna da 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 da. Still the surname of her ex-husband.
Giving the false impression as if she was still the wife of the man. And I mean, a common law right exists for men who feel uncomfortable about that too. So I will relate to the society in which we find ourselves now, where divorce is so common. You know, when we were even growing up, divorce was an odd subject. But now, people, before they even go into a relationship, they have a prenuptial agreement to, divorce and whatever. So that woman, for instance, cannot feel sure about taking her husband's name, since she accepts does not even know how this marriage is going to go and how far it's going to travel. And then the whole idea of possibly dropping the name after divorce. So I've known a woman who, after divorce, decided to convert back to their old names. So these are some of the unreality or uncertainties that exist that may make a woman wish to hinder, that hinder a woman's drive to take on the husband's name. These are all some of these things. But obviously, I believe that the advantages of having a husband far outweighs all the disadvantages one can think of. In fact, I can hardly find one disadvantage. If you had a family name, a Rockefeller name, so what? You know, that's another reason why some even make compound names and so forth and so on. But I would put it very mildly that I don't really begrudge any woman who makes any choice, because every choice that you make has got its own consequences. If it's somebody who doesn't really care about what society thinks, your own big deal, then so forth. But if I have the advantage of advising any woman or any young person who's going into a marriage, I will have no reason to give you why you shouldn't take your husband's name.
Okay.
Yes, that's my fair take on this matter. I will encourage any woman who has to marry to take on her husband's name. It does not how powerful you are. Some of them also, like you said, Konjo Riela. Her father was Konjo, okay? Now her husband's name is Riela. Because the Konjo family name is so well established, then she believes that dropping it may possibly make her lose her identity or whatever. But these are very personal decisions. God himself did not create Mr. and Mrs. Adam. You know that? It was Adam and Eve. And so if they want to make these choices, please let them make. But I would advise you, take your husband's name. I would do it. Okay,
so who would advise you to take your husband's name after marriage? Now, Caroline, so when a woman decides not to take her husband's surname, in relation to what Kweku just mentioned about, you know, the whole divorce thing and then all that, wouldn't that possibly presuppose that a woman would want to put herself in a very comfortable situation where, in case there is anything like divorce, it would make things easier on her part?
Very good question, and it requires dissecting a few things. So yes, I think that it is not the best thing to start off a marriage or prepare for a wedding where you're thinking, just in case this doesn't work out, then it will be easier. And I think to some extent that is selfishness. Okay. It looks like on the surface, it will look like you're being smart, you're making this decision, and but at the root of it, it's selfishness, and you're really not helping the marriage even to be fruitful. You know, and so I think that the mindset has to change, and you have to do things with intentionality. So it's really, again, it's important to ask yourself why. Is this really wise? You know, I love the Bible when it says, you know, whatever is noble, whatever is pure, whatever is right, whatever is uplifting, you know, that is what you should focus on. But if you're starting off the marriage thinking, okay, that if it doesn't work out, and also I think that it can be a little complicated, and also it can take a lot of processes to follow.
Okay.
When you want to change your name. So if the divorce happens and you do want to change your name, I think that it comes with a whole lot of stuff that you have to do, et cetera, et cetera. And so I recognize that some women will say, I'm going to go through the process. I need this name changed. But also, it's fine to just keep the name, you know, and avoid all the legal processes you have to go through to be able to.
Okay, all right. So viewers, we are talking about the topic for discussion today on Let's Talk Relationship is must a woman change her surname after marriage? Must a woman change her surname after marriage? And I have Kweku Y. Pencil, who is an Esquire, here with me. And I also have Dr. Caroline Kusi, who is a therapist as well, who's joined us via Zoom. So please make sure you get interactive with us on all our social media platforms. If you have any questions in relation to this topic, please, this is the time for you to send it now. The right people are here to answer it all for you. And so we have comments. Okay, we have a comment. Let's take the comment. What do we have? Okay, so this one says, there is no law or custom which requires that after marriage you must change your surname to your husband's surname. Mrs. simply means someone's wife. So no matter the kind of marriage type you perform, you can still be called a Mrs. without any change of name. Kwame Taste from Aflawo, and that's exactly what Kweku said at the beginning of his submission. That's exactly what he said. Now, let's come to the disadvantages.
No, but let me say something about this. Okay. I don't believe I wholly agree. You know, what he's saying is, so no matter the kind of marriage type of you can still be called a Mrs. without any change of name. That would be odd.
It would be odd.
Odd, because if you're Adjomansan, you can't call a Mrs. Adjomansan when your husband is called.
Okay.
You're very right. Your husband is called Mensa. So it's not true that you can be called a Mrs. without any change of name.
So the Mrs. would have to come with your husband's surname. You can't carry the Mrs. around with your maiden name.
No, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
No. So
I can't be called Mrs. Akomia. Shola calls me Mrs. Akomia. I don't know why she calls me Mrs. Akomia. I am not married to my father. Shola, I am not Mrs. Akomia. So I can only be called Mrs. after I adopt or legally take my husband's name.
Mrs. essentially means wife of.
Wife of.
Unless you are gay. Yes, so
sometimes I wonder in America how these people,
naturally,
they adopt. How they do things in relation to their name.
That's so.
That's not our focus, because in Ghana here we are not accepting that. So they're not doing that. So that's not the focus.
Yeah.
Let's come to the disadvantages
of
not adopting to your husband's surname after marriage.
Well, I've already mentioned the fact that socially it creates, I would put it this way, unless you've decided you don't really care, but like socially it creates problems in the sense of mistaking. I mean, having to explain yourself all the time. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You have to explain yourself all the time. People want to know why you have not accepted your husband, not changed your husband's name. People get confused in places where you introduce yourself and they also know your husband, and then the names are not the same, or you get into places and there's an assumption. You know, some even drop the titles completely, so that, let's say it's called Esita Flache. When they say Esita Flache, they believe that your husband name is Taflache. So therefore, so where's Mr. Taflache? Then you begin to wonder whether somebody ought to know something more than you call yourself. So I believe that talking about in Ghana in particular, in the context in which we find ourselves culturally, traditionally, everything, if you've gone through the ceremony, especially if you've had ordinance marriage, and you decide not to carry your husband's name, the whole thing appears odd. And it is something that you have to spend the rest of your life possibly trying to explain to everybody. And it's totally unnecessary. And if you decide that you don't want to care, it's your own business. That's the way it is. I mean, that's the major disadvantage that possibly I will talk about, because, I mean, like, we have traditional norms. And please let not, people forget. I mean, there are traditions. If people want to change it, it's their own big deal. But then they are going to bear the consequences of having to do that kind of thing. If I came into this studio with your eyelashes and whatever on me, people begin to wonder whether they're talking to a man or talking to a woman. British Prime Minister recently to say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And they appear to have whatever. Okay, cool.
All right. Caroline?
So there are many disadvantages, but I want to focus on the behavior aspects, right? So if you don't give your spouse a satisfactory reason for wanting to keep your surname, then you have to know human behavior. There are going to be some very key issues that will come up out of nowhere, after the union. And one of those things is resentment, and it will pop up in the person's head. People, will ask, why this, why that, and
all right.
It will really affect those things.
Okay, Caroline, thank you so much. Unfortunately, this is where we have to end this segment. We are pressed for time. We'll definitely continue this conversation. Kweku, unfortunately, we have to end. We'll continue next week, hopefully. And so my guest for Let's Talk Relationship has been in studio with me, Kweku Y. Pencil, Esquire, private legal practitioner, notary public managing solicitor, Pencil & Co. And then Dr. Caroline Kosi, behavioral scientist and therapist. My name is Asiedua Akomia. Rosemary Felly and KMJ did this with me today. We'll come your way again tomorrow at 6 a.m. Do take care.